Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another Axel 72 video, and in today's video I'm going to be giving my prediction for the Lerrone Richards versus Albert Ramirez fight. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so, like the video if you do indeed like the video, and feel free to join the Patreon as well. You can request any kind of content and I will try my best to get out any kind of combat sporting related content, might I add, and I will try my best to get out. There's been plenty of videos that have come from it so far, and especially recently, and I appreciate all the support in which I've had with it, and of course the link will be in the description. Let's get straight into this one though, and I mean, this fight has really come out of nowhere as a fight, and I mean, it gives a real opportunity to Lerrone Richards to get quite a sudden path to a world title shot, which is, like I've mentioned, really come out of nowhere. He was meant to have fought Joe Ward in the summer of last year, but that didn't happen. So he had another takeover fight, which we kind of been getting used to with Richards' career. And obviously, you know, at one point Richards was seen as the big kind of British undefeated light heavyweight guy coming through, or super middleweight guy at the time. And it just never really happened. The career never really progressed, and he's kind of really struggled to get his career on a world level path in the recent years, with him being on a high after beating the undefeated power puncher at the time in Carlos Gongora, who, you know, like I mentioned at the time, not many people were wanting to face, and he really was a big name to beat. And then, you know, you would have expected, because that was on, I believe, a big kind of matchroom show, you would have expected his career to, like I mentioned, push on. But then after that, he didn't fight for a year and a half, and then he kind of had two takeover fights just to, I suppose, you know, get back going again. But like I mentioned, it was just such a loss of momentum when things were going such heavily in his favour. Then he lost in a dramatic fashion to Steed Woodall when I suppose he eventually took a bit of a step up. I mean, Steed Woodall was never really seen as much of a step up at all, but Lerrone Richards obviously, he kind of looked like he was kind of underestimating him and overlooking him, but then to get stopped by him as well, you know, he's not a massive puncher, Woodall, and obviously since then Woodall's gotten given some good opportunities. He's fought Callum Simpson, and he's also fought on a Queensbury card as well against Ezra Taylor, and he's been knocked out twice since. So for him to, you know, have his only big win be against Lerrone Richards, again, it's not really the best of looks. And now, you know, like I mentioned, he's had a takeover fight since then, but now he's suddenly getting an interim world title shot. I think it's just strange, and like I mentioned, really come out of nowhere. I mean, credit to his management, I suppose, to get him this opportunity, but I suppose Ramirez just wanted an opponent, and you look around the WBA rankings, and there definitely is guys in which he could have fought, in which possibly, you know, you could argue deserves it. But I suppose at least Lerrone Richards' record looks good on paper, and it is a bit of a bigger name to an extent, and you know, it can keep him with that interim belt for a little longer, whilst perhaps Benavidez, who I believe still has the regular belt, goes on to fight in the cruiserweight division to then allow him to become full champion again. I'm not too sure, but I mean, Ramirez last time out, he got a kind of world level welcome and world level kind of recognition with his fight against Jerome Pampillon. That was, I believe, the first time which he fought on DAZN. It was a time in which I don't think there was really many other events going on, so I suppose it actually got a bit more of a push. But like I mentioned, he fought Pampillon, who, to be fair, I didn't really think deserved an interim title shot either, because he was coming off two losses not that long ago before fighting Ramirez. But again, that was a bit of a strange one. But he TKO'd him in impressive fashion to pick up the interim belt. I think people were thinking, you know, they weren't too sure on Ramirez just yet, and I think that was fair because of, again, the level of opponent in which Ramirez had fought up to the belt, and, you know, again, just he's not that big of a name just yet. But I do feel like that was a good performance from Ramirez, and the fact that he managed to get a knockout prior to that as well against an undefeated opponent, he's on a good run, and he's looking good, and like I say, stopping the opponents. And if he can get a stoppage win here, again, it's not a crazily big win because of the fact of course, Lerrone Richards has been stopped the last time he took any kind of step up. But still, it's still a good win. And like I mentioned, it's not an awful name to have on his resume, Lerrone Richards. And I do feel like Ramirez, with a win here, or possibly if Richards is able to get a win here, he could be in line for the full title, even if he doesn't have to fight to get a title, because the WBA belt is in a bit of a similar mess to what it's in the heavyweight division, but I would say possibly in even of a worse spot with the WBA belt in the light heavyweight division, and it's not really being talked about. There is, from what I believe, still a WBA regular champion in David Benavidez. David Benavidez didn't defend, well, at least it wasn't said that he was defending his WBA regular belt when he fought Anthony Yard. I don't know if that was because it's a risky fight and they didn't want to put it on the line, or because he vacated it to focus on the WBC belt. I'm not entirely sure, but I believe Benavidez is still WBA regular champion. And obviously, if he moves up, then he's probably going to he's going to most likely be forced to vacate the title. So that could then elevate Ramirez. But also, we have super champion in Dmitry Bivol, and of course, that was basically what was able to be on the line to make the Bivol-Beterbiev fights for the undisputed belt. But it's just messy, and to have an interim champion, a regular champion, and a super champion all with one sanctioning body in one weight division is just very messy. And I suppose Benavidez moving up at least could make it a little bit less messy, I suppose. But again, it's just weird. The WBA, can kind of sneakily get away with doing this, but again, it's just strange. And like I said, possibly it could be a big, this could be a world title fight for one of these two. But if you do win the regular belt, is it really recognised the same? Not really. Again, it's the same with the heavyweight division as well. Nobody really cares about the WBA regular champion. And I mean, like I mentioned, Benavidez, the fact that he didn't fight for the WBA regular belt last time out, maybe it's because he actually didn't care about the belt that much. Again, there is, not a massive prestige about being WBA regular champion. The super champion is what is the most important, but really, of course, there should only be one champion. But like I say, that's just what makes it a bit all over the place. To speak about both fighters individually, though, Richards as a fighter is a southpaw. They're both southpaws, which is going to make this an interesting fight with the footwork of both of them. For sure, and he manages distance really well. I think that's, of course, what he wants and what he's best at. He keeps you typically where he wants you when he's at his best. He kind of makes you take a jab. If you are going to be able to get in at all, you are going to have to take a shot, and most likely that being a jab from him. He changes levels well with that jab. I would like to see him change levels a little bit more with kind of other punches, but I'd also would like to see him throw a bit more variety of punches for the most part as well. He's got good, strong fundamentals. I think his fundamentals are very strong. He takes steps back and he can move off as well. He's not a crazily agile type of fighter, but he will be willing to take steps back and, like I say, kind of step off and pick off his punches. He sets you up, like I say, for the most part, off the jab. He's got quite sharp, timed counters, especially, again, talking about the jab with the jab. He can counter with it as well. If you throw your jab and it's not reaching the target, he will then throw one on top of that will reach the target. He's typically a back-footed type fighter, or at least he is willing to fight on the back foot, and he can fight on the back foot. I don't know if it gets messy, if he's that comfortable on the back foot, or if it gets physical or to an in-close fight, or if he's handling a lot of pressure, if he'll be able to deal with fighting on the back foot that well, but he is comfortable doing it. He's a pretty composed fighter, and maybe too composed. Maybe that can be a problem with him sometimes, but he's also very consistent as well. Pretty much what you see is what you get. Like I say, very strong fundamentals and just kind of consistent work rate. He, negative wise, like I mentioned, is probably going to invite the pressure from Ramirez, which I think Ramirez will enjoy. Of course, like I mentioned, he's been hurt. I mean, when he got knocked down by Woodall, that was a pretty bad TKO, and like I say, it came out of nowhere, and it did look like he was hurt, and the way that he dropped and everything, it was bad. So of course, he hasn't been punched by anybody the same way since, and Ramirez is a big puncher in itself, and again, that's what can make this fight dangerous. He typically likes a bit of a slower pace, which Ramirez might not mind for certain parts, but he might try and up it at times. He's got a limited output, I believe. Richards, he does have moments where he's not really throwing too much, and again, he doesn't really use his hooks that much or really turn into his punches that much either. He's not as aggressive, in my opinion. I think you can wait too long for the big punches. Like I say, he's setting them up, but he's not actually delivering through on them. He's not got much head movement. Like I mentioned, he doesn't mix in too many shots. He's not as powerful, in my opinion. Again, I mean, you can just look at his resume and the knockouts. I think it's 4 in 19. Again, like I say, just not a massive power puncher. And the fact that he's fought, his last 3 out of his 4 opponents against journeyman, haven't been getting loads of knockouts in between. You should think he has more than 4 knockouts, because a lot of his resume has, again, for his prospect period as well, he's had quite a few journeymen on his resume, who of course are known to be hard to knock out, but in the light heavyweight division or in the super middleweight division, in these heavyweight divisions, you would want them to be kind of knocked out, and Ramirez kind of has been able to knock out that kind of pedigree of opponent. He doesn't fight in close that well, and I think when he is trying to be the front foot aggressor, I think his accuracy drops a bit as well. To speak about Ramirez as a fighter, he's got a big jab, which he follows off with a big straight afterwards. Again, he's, pretty much trying to do what Richards is wanting to do, but he's able to do it. But again, I think Richards' jab fundamentally is better, and I think he's able to use it more controllingly, but Ramirez's jab is bigger, and like I say, he's then following off of it better. So again, it could be a bit of a battle of the jab for a little bit, and that will be a real interesting dynamic for this fight. He's got strong one-punch KO power, that's for sure, and he can throw, and when he throws, he's often moving his head off the line. I like that, even if it's just ducking off to the side, again, throwing with moving his head off the line. It's something which just so many fighters don't do. He can catch you around the guard with his punches. I mean, his hooks are a bit winging, and he's not really twisting into them all that well himself, but he is able to catch you around the guard. He's got good timing. He is willing to fight on the back foot, but I have a feeling in this occasion he is going to be the front foot type of fighter, but he's got good timing himself with his shots. But unless Richards happens to become some sort of aggressive fighter in this fight, I just don't think that timing is really going to be all too necessary. He pushes his punches through. He's got better shot variety, in my opinion. He's got, of course, the southpaw stance, which again, like I touched on, will be interesting. And of course, like I mentioned, he can fight on the front foot or the back foot. And I think he is more comfortable fighting in close than that of Richards. Negatives about him, like I mentioned about his hooks, he's not had many people really been able to kind of manage his power so far. So if Richards is able to manage his power and able to deal with it and possibly able to tie him up or frustrate him at any point, it will be interesting to see how he deals with that. He leans quite heavy on his front foot, which could perhaps put him off balance or could perhaps put him in bad spots if Richards is able to use some quick movement. He's got quite a low right hand, which means you can kind of catch him around that if you go with like a left hook. And like say, if Richards is going to throw big, it is going to be, of course, coming from the left side as well. He goes back in lines, in my opinion. He's open when he's throwing a bit more than that of Richards, just because he throws a bit more than Richards. He's flat-footed. He's, well, for the most part, flat-footed. He's got quite a tense upper body. He can force a fight, especially if he feels like he's got you hurt, and he can get drawn into a war late, which is something in which actually I feel like could go into his favour in this fight, because Richards probably isn't going to be wanting to get drawn into any kind of a war. Who do I think is going to win this fight? I think that Albert Ramirez is going to be able to win via TKO in round 10. I think it's going to be a real solid performance by Ramirez. I think Ramirez, I'm not fully sold on him just yet, because of course the level of opposition in which he actually has fought isn't crazily good, but it is difficult to get, good level opponents in the light heavyweight division, because there isn't an incredibly large amount outside of, the UK, and then also, Bivol, Benavidez and Beterbiev. Other than that, you are kind of scraping the barrel a little bit with some real top names. But like I mentioned, I think he is a good guy. I think he is a good fighter. I think, like I mentioned, he is going to be able to push his punches through. I think he is going to be able to hurt Lerrone Richards. I think Lerrone might have success a bit with the jab. I don't think Ramirez is going to respect that enough. And when he gets his punches through, I think he is going to hurt and really throw to hurt and really, like I say, damage Richards in this fight. And again, if it does go into a war later on, he's going to have success and, like I mentioned, win via TKO in round 10. And then, I mean, who he can go on to fight next, arguably he kind of is, you know, he's not the most hyped up guy in the light heavyweight division, but he is kind of one of the better names to then deserve a title shot, in my opinion, outside of, you know, Benavidez is moving on. Bivol, Beterbiev, you know, I want to see the trilogy of that. But if that doesn't happen, we're hearing talks about Eifert versus Bivol because Eifert's a mandatory. You know, that could happen. I mean, Ramirez, at some point, you would think if he's WBA interim champion, would become a mandatory for Bivol, but I don't know when that would happen or if that would happen. Like I mentioned, he could get elevated to regular champion with this fight. Possibly then even a Beterbiev fight versus a Ramirez would be, you know, really entertaining, I feel. Two power punches against each other. Or Beterbiev was meant to fight Dion Nicholson. That was kind of rumoured to happen at one point, but I don't really know why that kind of fell through. I think it might have been through some injury with Beterbiev, but I don't exactly know for sure. But like I said, that could be a good fight to be made right there as well. So again, there is some good fights, there is some good names. But we will have to wait and see if Ramirez is going to start getting that push, in which I feel like he deserves, which hopefully he will get after this fight if he wins. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you didn't, like the video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.